Good evening, everyone. How's it going out there? Welcome back here to a Wednesday night, 9:42 p.m. here, California time, October 29th, 2025. Getting closer here to Halloween. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe shows a looks like a 2.6 earthquake hiding out here somewhere around the Indonesia area. Pretty good cluster of earthquake activity still ongoing there. Some interesting earthquake activity out there around Bermuda. What is going on out there across that area? Look, take a look at this Earthquake 3D globe here and tell me what's sticking out like a sore thumb. This quake right here, 4.1 earthquake coming in. Fairly recent out here. That's kind of a very odd earthquake. Now, the hurricane, let me show you guys here real quick. Let me go back here. Hurricane Melissa. I'll show you the current position of that, which points it south of the area of Bermuda. See where we're at. Bermuda up here. It's not expected to hit the Bermuda area until probably Thursday in the evening sometime. It just got through passing the Bahamas down here as a hurricane. But there's definitely an interesting earthquake stirring up out here in the Atlantic, a 4.1 earthquake, 6 miles deep underneath this area. Now, historically, I don't recall too much activity stirring up out here, although it looks like there has been some movement. If you look back 1900 to 2015, there has been some 4.5 earthquakes and higher, specifically around this area of Bermuda southward. So, not all that common. I don't recall the last time we've seen that earthquake. Seen an earthquake out here in this area of the Atlantic. But hey, we got one right now. It doesn't happen all that often. I guess we can take a look here real quick, see when the last one stirred up. Just, for historical reference, we'll see what we got going on. 4.0 and above, and we're going to go back here to the year 1000 and just draw a little area here around Bermuda and see what we got out here. That may be a little bit too much, but we'll take a look here real quick, see. There may be a few out here. There's Bermuda up here. Let's see, there's today's 4.1 earthquake. Last one looks to be back in 2023. Previous to that, 2011. Now, the majority of the earthquakes don't get much bigger than that. It does look like they can get up in the lower 5 range, but, it's not all that common there to see earthquake activity out there a ways away from the plate boundary. Some interesting activity out here across the eastern area of the Caribbean plate. Got a number of earthquakes out here, including a recent 4.8. Of course, this area had some larger movement here recently with a decent 6-pointer, 6.5 to be exact, a couple days ago. Aftershock sequences going on there. I don't see any signs yet that this is stirring up to be anything bigger. Now, obviously, this area is a major region for some big earthquake activity. But right now, this is just a typical sequence there of aftershock movement from that 6.5 a couple days ago. All right, looking up here into the States, we're kind of working backwards here, but the odd earthquake activity out there in the Atlantic kind of stirred me off, kind of swayed me off into a different location here. Oil fields still rocking and rolling. The eastern portion of the state's pretty quiet for now, but the North American plate in general has been on the move. We've seen a number of earthquakes up there across Yellowstone National Park, super volcano, a couple different swarms going on here. 51 earthquakes, 3.7 earthquake here, fairly recent. Now, if we go and look at the last 24 hours, 21 earthquakes here today in 3 separate locations. There has been some uplift going on out here across the northwestern corner of Yellowstone National Park in the last 4 years or so. We checked that out last night. Nothing big, but it's interesting here that we got uplift going on along with earthquake activity in a couple different regions out here. Now it does look like they're reporting some of the smaller microquake activity. That is good, but let's go check out, see if they've updated their graphs out here. I get it. There's government shutdown. They're making a big deal out of it, but it doesn't take a human person to tend to these seismograph stations. These seismograph stations are digital. You don't have to have someone change the tape or the paper every 24 hours or so. So it's interesting here that this has not been updated in 5 days, almost 6 days now. The last time this was updated is on the 24th. So, and that goes for all the seismograph stations out there for the USGS. Now, if you look at the University of Utah, where these folks get their information from, there's the amplitudes are just completely squashed here to where you really can't see anything. There was an earthquake earlier, about 4 or 5 hours ago, which would match the 4 to 5 hours ago. That would probably match this 1.8 earlier. But there's a number of smaller quakes occurring as well that's not going to show up in amplitude reading that squashed. It just won't. So it's interesting here. You know what? Ever since I've been talking about how the amplitudes have been squashed, there's actually been a couple stations here that have been improved in terms of their amplitude readings and adjustments. There's at least 2 here, the Promontory and Mount Sheridan. Now, if they can get to a couple of these other ones, hey, I would appreciate it. So maybe I don't know who's calling in. Maybe there's a few folks calling in there to the USGS, maybe pressuring them the University of Utah to adjust their amplitudes out here. Parker Peak, not so much, but these are new. The amplitudes here have been improved across the Promontory and Mount Sheridan. So it would be nice if we get Madison River here, where the earthquake activity is turned up, to be adjusted as well. Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on for earthquake activity, but we better double check here the volcanoes just in case. By the way, tremor counts elevated south as expected. If you watched my earthquake update this morning with the activity offshore there along the Blanco fracture zone, that 5-pointer and the 4-pointer early this morning, well, it's a strike slip boundary out here, and it's better to show you guys here on the USGS map, the oceanic crust map here. When earthquake activity stirs up out here across this plate boundary, which is a strike slip boundary, not a spreading seafloor center like over here where new oceanic crust is being formed, or down here, but this is a strike slip boundary that normally further strains this area down south here in this general fashion. You can pretty much follow some of the lines here. There's actually a little bit of amplification there off the Gorda Ridges north that strain this area of the Cascadia subduction zone, and that's where we're seeing the Cascadia uptick in the last 24 hours, right down here where I pointed at. So nothing big, but obviously that's further straining the locked area of the Cascadia subduction zone. A real quick glance here at the volcano activity across Mount Rainier. Not a whole lot being reported, but man, it's, there's still some earthquake activity occurring, as you can see here in the last few hours. Nothing big, handful of earthquakes, very, very small microquake activity there across the Mount Rainier area. For Mount St. Helens, nothing being reported out there as far as recent activity goes. Looking at the live recorded view, and this, similar to Yellowstone, Yellowstone should just automatically continue. It doesn't take a human review to process this data. It should be automatic here. So it's weird that the data just shut off completely there for USGS when it comes to Yellowstone monitoring. Oh man, previous data. Let's see what we got. There's 3.4 near Astoria. Okay, that was that was around 6 o'clock this morning. That's going to be the 5.4 earthquake showing up there. 5.4 way off the coast of Oregon, showing up on Yellowstone seismograph station. See that? P wave and an S wave. Nothing, and this is at Mount St. Helens there in Washington. Nothing big showing up as far as any elevated activity. There's a couple smaller earthquakes there. Even today, as you can see, there's a couple small earthquakes in the background noise. But nothing big going on there for now, but things are adjusting, things are moving. When the house gets moving, when the house gets cleaning there, that's when bad things can happen. Because there's a lot of locked areas out here across the West Coast that are, very capable of producing some big earthquake activity. And the amount of time that has passed is very sufficient that warrants that big earthquake activity. It's not like we had a Cascadia event 100 years ago. It was 325 years ago, okay? So here we are, whether we like it or not, living in the future where we will probably experience a big earthquake out here. The question is when. It could happen at any minute, any hour. There's that 5.4 and also earlier a 4.8 around the Blanco fracture zone. Northern California, no earthquake activity showing up here, but we do have the tremor activity being elevated underneath the southern coast there of Oregon. Bay Area pretty quiet for now. Looking at Southern California, the latest quake does show a 3.0 along the San Jacinto fault zone. It's a fairly lengthy fault there that secondary to the San Andreas fault. Does see a lot of earthquake activity, but a little 3-pointer up on it right now. Nothing major going on out there in Southern California for now. Taking a look here at the earthquake 3D globe. Check this out here. Man, look at that earthquake. It's just an odd one. I may make that the title of my thumbnail here tonight because look at that. Just an odd event. Also, some further activity down here into the Drake's Passage region. 4.7 earthquake. That's where we've had a number, two 7.0 earthquakes this year down there. Away from any major plate boundary. Plate boundaries exist right here. There's a fracture boundary out here. We've just seen a lot of movement out here recently. Large earthquake activity. A number of 6s, a couple 7s. Most recent 4.7 out here in the oceanic basin there. A little odd. I know we got that South America magnetic anomaly that I'll talk about. I'm kind of thinking about making a specific video focusing in more on that when it comes to that event. I've had a couple questions about it, so I want to make a video detailing what I think is going on here and how it could affect plate tectonics and stuff like that here across the area. But we'll do that a little bit later. Little swarm of movement here across the Peru-Chile Trench, as noted in this little area. That's south of where the largest earthquake ever recorded, the 9.5, the Great Chilean Earthquake in 1960 took place. So, yeah, this area can produce some mega quakes. It's a major subduction zone that extends a fairly lengthy area. Middle America Trench up here, some 4s and 3s, nothing big going on. I am, let's see here. I was going to adjust the timeout here, but it looks like we're fine as far as the amount of earthquake activity that's on the globe here. I try to keep it the last 24 hours. Sometimes when we get specific areas showing uptick, I have to make the adjustment here, but Alaska, some movement up there, 4.3 across the Aleutian Trench, some aftershock activity across the Kuril-Kamchatka. One deep earthquake into the Japan Trench, it looks like, a little 3-pointer. One area that I've noticed that's gone absolutely silent is the area around Taiwan northward here to the Nankai Trough. Everything is moving all around it, but it's been locked and just super quiet out here. A little concerned about this specific area. Typical clustering going on here across the Indonesia area. That's obviously we can get some bigger earthquake activity, but that's very normal here to see a cluster. New Zealand, really nothing new following that 5.0 earthquake earlier this morning. A three-pointer, North Island area, but nothing bigger than that for now. Swarming out there across Turkey still. Latest earthquake shows a 3.2. I do think something bigger is brewing out in the area. I think this has something to do with the recent movement in the Santorini area, near the volcano. We've seen a swarm of earthquake activity here early this year. There's probably 10,000 earthquakes or more in that swarm. But seems like things are shifting to the northeast here. Turkey's seen a number of 6-pointers, and we're getting an unusually large amount of aftershock activity during those sequence of events here. This is just the last 24 hours, as you can see. That's an incredible amount of earthquake activity across western Turkey. So I do think something bigger is brewing out here. When things stay elevated like this, that's not a sign of just your typical aftershock activity. It's a sign that we haven't completed our event out here, whatever that may be. So I do think something bigger is brewing. One earthquake there in between the strait here of looks like Morocco area. Let's see what we got. Morocco and the Spain area looks like some earthquake activity stirring up there on the earthquake 3D globe. One earthquake up in actually a couple earthquakes there in the rift boundaries of Iceland. Nothing big going on there for now. Got an earthquake down there in the southern Atlantic. It looks like a 5.4 from last night. Is that earthquake showing up? Yes, it is. A lot of activity stirring up out here, The areas of concern, a 5.4 is really not going to alleviate any stress out here across the Cascadia. In fact, that's more of a bad sign because these are events that stir further pressure down here across these locked areas. We need to see release and strain out here across the Cascadia, the San Andreas Fault, and there really hasn't been anything out here, as far as any major release of earthquake or pressurization. I want to show a little event out here real quick. We'll go up across the Cascadia and we'll go all the way down south here to the San Andreas Fault. I covered this quite a bit here. The amount of time that has passed since the Cascadia earthquake. That was 1700 for a big old 9-pointer. It's one of these days we're going to see a red dot out here. And it's going to be that big, and we're going to know about it for sure. I do think it's going to happen sooner than later. I don't think this is going to last 500 years for strain. In fact, if we go back and look at the amount of time that has passed between events, as far as partial ruptures and full ruptures, we're beyond the regular interval level for the Cascadia. Yes, this area down south here does get a number of earthquakes. It's a super dynamic area between three major plates. You got the Pacific, North America plate, southern portion here of the Gorda plate. So there's always a lot of earthquake activity stirring up here. And we can see a partial rupture. The partial rupture occurred way beyond 1700. That it doesn't cover that, at least not on the USGS map. 1906 earthquake, 7.9. Could you imagine the 7.9 in San Francisco right now? Could you imagine the complete devastation that would take place here? Crazy. Humans forget things. They really forget. They forget disasters. I seen a comment here on one of my social media posts claiming that I don't feel a big earthquake is coming up in my city up here, and I think they're along the coast here of Oregon. The ground is completely calm. I feel everything is okay. Do you know what that's called? That's called complacency. That's called complacency. No one can predict when a big earthquake's going to happen. But I do know one thing, folks. time. Everything on this planet, universe, is all about timing. When things pass, when there's been a lot of time that has passed since a big earthquake has happened, what do you think's going to happen? You know, we're just living in that time period right now in the future where I firmly believe that we will experience a West Coast megaquake out here. Probably not like the San Andreas fault movie. You know, the San Andreas, that's a little crazy. But a rupture from south to north is not out of the question. In fact, geologists, scientists have confirmed that there's been a relationship between the Cascadia and the San Andreas fault. Whether they rupture all at once or within hours or days of each other, that has happened numerous times in the past. We have yet to experience that. There's the last partial rupture along the San Andreas fault, the southern end, back in 1812 there. 1812, 1912, 2012. We're over 200 years. We are over 200 years there. There's a 7.9. That's up north. So, you know, I got to fix my maps here. I always show the intervals here between the San Andreas fault, you know, the events when big earthquake activity strikes. But that, you know, this earthquake up north here, a portion of the southern branch of the San Andreas fault, but this is a little bit further down south, 1812. So that puts this time period over 200 years. And more so down at the extreme southern end. But anyway, you know, we have a lot to look forward to. Good and bad. You know, the bad thing is we have to go through it. The good thing is we know that once it happens, we got, you know, some extended time period before it happens again. Just don't be complacent, folks. You know, whether the ground is solid and you're feeling the vibes right now, you gotta have a plan. You really do. You can't be complacent like that. I remember coming up here to the coast of Oregon a couple years back, around Gold Beach area, a little bit further up north here, and talking to a few locals, and they had no clue that a sleeping giant was offshore. But those that did, the complacency was a little scary. They told me that, well, they've had a good life. You know, if it happens, it happens. You know, that you know, could you imagine that mindset? Well, if it happens, it happens. If I die, I die. I just don't see it. You know, because the Cascadia is survivable out here. But I wouldn't want to become a statistic, that's for sure. It's not going to be pretty, but we got to be on guard, folks. That's one thing I know of. All right, so pretty active out here across the Pacific. There's been no big earthquake activity along the expected pressurization areas. That's the San Andreas fault, the Cascadia. We've had some further movement in the strike slip boundary out here along the Blanco fracture zone, but nothing along these pressurization zones. A little concerning. 3.2 out in Turkey right now. Space weather activity, let's take a look. We're way down into the B 4.9 category. That's about as boring as you can get. Oh, it can be a little bit, you know, less than that, but you know, this is almost like solar minimum right here. There's some sunspots facing us. This is fairly recent. If you look at the magnetogram image, this is not so recent there, but Timothy sent me a oh man, did I remove it out here? Oh, there it is. This is fairly recent. I appreciate there, Timothy, one of our mods from the Stanford University education site shows one of the more recent imagery of the magnetogram image. And I'm guessing this is where SolarHam gets his data from as well. But Timothy, one of our mods here on the channel, very informative when it comes to websites and stuff like that. So if you have any information, definitely get a hold of him. He can transfer that info to you for sure. There's not a whole lot to look at out here. Pretty quiet. All the sunspots have disappeared into the sun, so to speak, and there's really not a whole lot of hope when it comes to the solar flare activity for now. As far as any major aurora activity, I think I called this here a couple nights ago. I said it was going to be either going to be a near miss or a hit. Well, this completely missed us. Not a whole lot going on there for the aurora activity from that supposed CME here a few nights back. Beautiful moon out there if you get a chance to look at it. 59% illumination. Again, 5% chance there for M flare, X flare, 1%. Wow. Hello, 40% chance for a C flare? I guess we better get used to that. Solar minimum coming up. Some more cosmic rays coming into the solar system when things back off with the sun. Let's see what else we got here. Storm Prediction Center. Not a whole lot there for severe weather. We're going to skip that for now. There's Hurricane Melissa down there across the Bahamas, heading north to Bermuda. Far as any major systems go, we're still looking at a pretty significant system there for Northern California, Pacific Northwest, San Francisco included there, first week of November. I'm keeping my fingers crossed here, folks, because I need some rain in my life. You know, like a lot of you folks love the sunshine. I've had enough of 100-degree temperatures all year. I'm done with that. Bring me some cloudy days, some wind, and some rain. That is my type of sunshine. I'm not even joking. So it does look like that is still on the forecast there. Well, this goes not to my forecast range. Let's see what we got as far as any hazards go. As far as the NOAA site goes, it does look like there's a slight risk here for Northern California for heavy precipitation that's coming from that storm the first week of November. Also maybe some wind events. Wind is up there. It's just kind of getting blocked out there from the precipitation category. But we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful that this will swing down further south. Right now the weather models are kind of, they're trending a little bit wetter down here across Northern California. I like the way that's coming in. That means no rain shadow there for the Sacramento Valley. So I will take it. I need me some rain, let me tell you. Seismograph stations there, the majority of them look pretty quiet, but things are on the move out there, folks. Just have a good night. We'll catch you guys out here for the Thursday morning update. Stay safe out there.